reiterate what Carla Marie said. It's great to see such a big group of people here and be able to talk about some of the current issues that are related to us. So knowing that there's a bit of a stretch of different people within the room from different backgrounds, I'll kind of combine the discussion I'll have today around a bit of an introduction around CPAB, since some people may not know as much about us, but also talk about some of the current issues and also talk about how you might see interactions with CPAB as you go forward in your different roles. So as just a bit of an introduction to CPAB, we've got, as the audit regulator, we have a number of different focus areas. So the first one, and probably the most significant part of our operations, is our inspections area. And so that really relates to any of the auditors of public companies. Anyone who wants to audit a public company has to register with us. So we would have a registration program, and then we would have an inspection program that goes through kind of a regular basis, reviewing the audit files and performance of the work that's done by the auditors. So that's kind of a key area, and we'll talk a little bit more about that as we go a little further in the presentation. We also have a risk group which helps to focus some of our operations in our inspections area, but other areas as far as just understanding what are the key risks within the market, within audit firms, but also risks within the reporting issuer population. And the last one, which is the area that I spend more of my time in, is the area of stakeholder engagement. And that's really focused on trying to have discussions with all the stakeholders that have an impact from an audit quality perspective. And when we look towards that, that includes having discussions with audit committees, that includes discussions with management, investors, and others, and really just trying to have a broader discussion around who can impact audit quality and what are the areas that can focus on. And when we look at our stakeholder engagement's really focused on a bit of a regional basis. And so I'm based, as Grant said, I'm based in Toronto and deal with kind of our central region. We have a regional director based in Montreal who deals with our East and Quebec region, and we have a new regional director, Mike Pachuluk, who's just in the just right over here. So he's just joined us about a week and a half ago to lead up our Vancouver and Western operations. So he'll be the one who will kind of take over a lot of these types of presentations going forward, but he would deal with the Western region, kind of BC, Alberta mainly, and dealing with talking to audit committees, management, others. So that's how we kind of operate ourselves from a stakeholder engagement. Location-wise, bulk of CPAB is based in Toronto, but we have regional offices, as I said, in Montreal and in Vancouver. So this slide here, just to put a bit of context on where CPAB fits in, kind of the triangle that we have here. Some people would refer to as the three-legged stool, or the kind of the area from the traditional audit relationship, where we have the auditor, the audit committee or board of directors, and we have management. So kind of those are the key areas from an audit perspective. And to put into perspective where CPAB fits into it, we have the direct line responsibility, the oversight over the external auditors. But over the last number of years, we've had more and more outreach and discussions with audit committees, and also trying to have discussions with management as well. And we'll talk a little more about what we're trying to do with audit committees, as Carla Marie talked about the importance of audit committees in the whole oversight structure. I think that's an important area for us. So we have more interactions with audit committees. We changed our rules a number of years ago to have a voluntary protocol to have sharing of our inspection findings directly with audit committees. So the extent that a file has been selected and reviewed by us and the firm is participating in the protocol, as an audit committee, you'd receive information from us as far as what we looked at in the file, what were the findings from the file review, just to have you getting a little bit more information around the audit itself and the results of our review. So we look at our inspections area. This kind of describes what we do, usually kind of taking all of the reporting issuers that are out in the Canadian marketplace, about 8,000 reporting issuers or so, 300 audit firms, combine that together, do a risk assessment, identify what areas we want to spend time on in a given year, perform our inspections. And then when you look at our inspections, we kind of have a couple different areas where you could see communications coming out from us. We have public reporting, so twice a year we put out our results of our inspections, kind of key themes that you see. We've seen from the results of our inspections. But then also we have communications we have with the firms on a regular basis as we do the inspections, reports on the individual files that we look at, but also an overall firm report around the results of our inspection and any recommendations we have. But then, as I said just a little bit earlier, we now have communications with the audit committees, and that if the file is selected and the firm is participating in the protocol, that reporting on the individual file would go to the audit committee, just to give them that additional transparency and clarity on what the findings were. So when we also talk about what we do, there's also a number of areas where we deal with other organizations. We're a fairly small organization, and we deal with a lot of other organizations, and put a couple on the slide here. First one is the provincial securities commissions, like Carla Marie. And in that area, because the provincial securities commissions oversee the operations of the reporting issuers, interact with management, interact with audit committees, and set the rules around how reporting issuers should operate, we have a lot of interactions with the securities commissions in talking about our inspections findings, where we run across any particular issues, any restatements or possible restatements. We do have agreements with many of the securities commissions to share that information with the securities commissions so they're aware of any restatements or potential errors or issues that we may be running across. A lot of the interaction we have is with the audit firm. The audit firm will have good discussions, but we also do have requirements where we are communicating and having discussions with the securities commissions on those types of issues as well. From an auditing standards perspective, we don't set the auditing standards. The auditing standards are set by the Auditing and Assurance Standards Board, the AASB, and they would set the standards, and we would have a lot of interactions and discussions with the Auditing Standards Board around any potential issues that we're seeing or challenges we're seeing in auditors in applying the auditing standards. So that's a couple of the organizations. We also deal on a regular basis with the Institute of Corporate Directors, dealing with CPAP Canada, and just another bunch of different organizations that have an impact from an audit quality perspective. So one of the questions that we've heard over the years as we talk to different people is kind of a question around, if I'm management at a company, how does CPAB decide which files are selected? And our file selections, our inspections are mainly on a risk-based. So we do try, for the most part, to select the riskier files within the audit firms, trying to look at the areas that may cause greater challenges from the audit firm, and take a look at the portions or sections of that file that might be a little bit more challenging, just to test and understand how the firm has dealt with some of the challenges on the riskier clients or the more challenging areas of the file. So we do a lot of financial ratio analysis, financial statement reviews. We have specializations from an industry perspective. We do, when we look at our across the country, we do have a number of people in our Vancouver office that are focused to a lot of mining companies, so have a good specialization there. We also have people that are specialized in the oil and gas industry that do more of our files from a Calgary perspective. And so trying to deal on the industry and help inform our activities that way. Then also look at the inspection history, and that somewhat drives what we're looking at, trying not to look at the same files terribly regularly, but also looking at the areas that might be more risky to the firm or to the capital markets itself. So this slide here, as I said, we report twice a year on the results of our findings, and so this is a bit of a summary of some of the key issues or key themes that we'd seen in our most recent report that we issued in November. And one of the areas that we've been working with is kind of the last box at the bottom around consistency of execution. And I think what we have seen over the years is that we've seen across most all the audit firms that we regulate, we've seen a lot of examples of very good audit work, no issues or very few issues. But we also, with that same firm or same office, same group of people, we do see instances where there are issues and there are improvements that are required. And one of the issues we've been working with the audit firms is really just to understand what processes can they put in place at the firm to make sure that there's a better consistency, so that you can see on a regular basis that the same firm can be putting out high quality audits across the board, instead of having some audits that are very well done, but some audits that are having more challenges. So trying to have that consistency is a really important area that we're trying to work with. But when we look at the themes, when we do come up with any potential issues, really looking at a couple of different areas. So the one is a fairly common one around significant accounting estimates. And these are areas that are quite challenging for management of companies, but equally challenging for the auditors. And one of the areas that we've tried to focus with the auditors is auditing the accounting estimates and combining that with a healthy level of professional skepticism. And so we do find it very important that the auditor is coming in with that appropriate level of skepticism in challenging the key estimates and asking those difficult questions and making sure that they are challenging the key areas that management's providing to them when they're developing models or creating valuations or things like that. And so you will continue to see and expect you would continue to see the auditors asking those questions, and it'd be important that they continue to take that role very seriously. So that's an area we continue to see some challenges on. The other main area is around having a good understanding of business processes, and that's an area we continue to see some challenges with, is making sure the auditor has a good understanding of how a process works right from the start all the way through the end. And having those good discussions and asking some of those dumb questions with management around how does this process really work from start to finish, because that really drives the risk assessment process. That drives the areas that the auditor needs to focus. And without that solid foundation, that leads to challenges in not auditing the right information, not challenging the right information, and not being able to perform a really high quality audit. And that also leads to not identifying the correct internal controls to test. And so it's an area that we continue to see some challenges with, and really just understanding that business and having that ability to see the process all the way through from start to finish. So the next slide here was just knowing that we had kind of a lot of different backgrounds in the room, just talking about audit quality and everybody's role within audit quality. I think as we continue to look at audit quality and have discussions from a stakeholder engagement perspective, it's really key and important to have those discussions around what's everybody's role. And we look at management's role as obviously very important to set the right control environment, have the right processes in preparing the financial statements, support the auditor, provide daily interaction with the auditor, and providing that information they need to do their job. From the audit committee, we see the audit committee's role as essentially important as far as providing that level of oversight, and oversight of the auditor, but also oversight of management, and having that stand back approach to understand, does management have the right people, the right processes to be able to support that audit, to be able to support high quality financial reporting. So looking at that, it's really important to see kind of all the stakeholders engaged and involved. And it kind of leads to the next slide here was really around interaction with CPAB and where you might see us. If you haven't already seen some interaction or information from CPAB, where are the areas that you might see impact from CPAB? The first one I had was to the extent that we've done an inspection of a file and we have identified significant issues, what we will require the firm to do is, if there is an area where we think there is a risk of material misstatement, a risk that there hasn't been enough audit work done, we'll require the firm to go back and remediate that. So they would have to go in after the year end, after all the financial statements have been filed and we've looked at the audit, to go back and perform additional procedures. So you may see auditors coming back after year end having to perform additional procedures to kind of close the gaps and make sure that there's no issue or no potential issues within the file. The next one you'd see is communication of inspection results. So as I said, you'll see for any firms that are participating in our protocol, which is most firms that we regulate, a communication where we would provide in writing the significant findings to the firm. The firm would respond back, and then once that is completed, then that information would go to the audit committee. There's also communication, even when the file doesn't have any significant findings, to go to the audit committee and make sure that they're aware that the file was selected. Here were the areas that CPAB looked at, and there were no significant findings identified. And that just provides that greater level of transparency to say, just make sure the audit committee is aware of what was happening. And the last one is really just the area that we're trying to do more of as we go along, is more engagement with audit committees and management, and trying to have similar discussions like this, but more smaller group discussions where we're going to have a two-way dialogue around, what are the issues that we're seeing, what are the current challenges and topics related to audit quality, but also to hear from audit committees and management around what issues they're seeing, what's important to them, and what are the areas that we can make an impact, or where we can work together with the audit firms or the profession to improve the environment. So that includes one-on-one meetings with audit committee chairs. We do that pretty regularly as far as reaching out and meeting with audit committee chairs, having discussions with audit committee chairs and management. We also have intended a number of audit committee meetings. So if you're a part of an audit committee or a director and feel like it would make sense to have CPAB come and meet with your audit committee, attend one of your audit committee meetings and provide some of these perspectives, we're always willing and happy to come with the audit firm, obviously, and have a good discussion around the current topics that are out there right now. And the last one is industry forums. I think we've heard a lot from audit committees, especially that it's much more relevant to have a discussion around issues that are related to their industry and specific to them. And so we're doing more and more industry forums. A couple years ago, we did a mining industry forum here in Vancouver. Last year, we did a oil and gas industry forum in Calgary. And really, it's trying to bring together kind of a smaller group of audit committee chairs that deal in a specific industry and talk about what are the issues that are important to them, and how can we move some of the issues forward and really create additional awareness around that. So as you go along, certainly if you're interested in that, you can reach out to myself, reach out to Mike, and talk about any of these different opportunities to have that better engagement going forward. The next one I had was just a bit of an awareness around some of the current emerging issues that we're seeing right now. First one, audit quality indicators, and there's some projects that are going, and we're putting some publications out around having more information from a quantitative nature shared between the auditor and the audit committee, giving them additional information that can help them oversee the auditor a little bit more effectively and have some information that can be useful, more practical from their perspective. The next one, expanded auditors report. It's an area that is evolving around the world where internationally, the international auditing standards have adopted an expanded, longer form audit report that will provide more information. That's an area that's still being discussed in Canada as far as when and how that'll get adopted. So it's an area to kind of keep your radar screen a little bit and keep aware that that's something that may be coming in Canada in the coming years. Audit committee reporting is another area that's starting to get on the radar screen, and I know the CSA has started a project, or is preliminary stages of starting a project to consider whether there's any changes needed from an audit to the reporting by audit committee. So it's an area that will be important for you to get a little bit more understanding of as that project develops. And the last one is an area that's top of our mind, is the area of the relevance of the audit and continuing to make sure that the audit is continuing to change. Kind of Carla Marie talked a lot about non-GAAP measures, and one of the questions we've been hearing from investors is there a need, or is there an interest of auditors getting more involved in some of these non-GAAP measures or important measures that might be moving the market more than some of the information that's within the financial statements. So it's a dialogue, a discussion that we're interested in having with investors and others around that topic. And the last slide I had here was just really kind of an awareness of some of the information that we've been putting together over the last couple of years around current topics, and encourage you to take a look at our website as far as current topics are out there. Join our subscription list, and certainly if you're interested in any of the items that are on here, happy to send that to you or have a discussion around that. Thanks a lot for your attention.